Hi, this is Irina Colourpuncture Academy, and today we are going to focus on supporting your immune system with a focus specifically on treatment of respiratory conditions such as colds and flus. If you are familiar with natural therapy approach, you know that in natural therapy of any kind, the role of lymphatic system, for example, will be at the foreground because a free flow of lymph and free circulation of lymph and blood throughout the body will ensure that every area will be free from toxins, will be supplied with oxygen and nutrients, and the products of metabolism internal, which could serve as toxins, and external pathogens management by the body. They should be released, removed from the body on a regular basis. So lymphatic system plays a big role. However, in Colourpuncture, we go well beyond the function of immune system and the function of lymphatic system, even as it is a natural therapist. I would say that we can talk about 5 levels at least, which comes to mind straight away when we talk about lymphatic system and immune system and supporting your immune system so you are free from inflammatory conditions and symptoms and colds and flus and headaches and the rest of it. So speaking of levels, speaking of layers, we start with the background. What is the background? Background is your natural body constitution. This is probably also your family history, family tendencies to certain diseases, conditions, pains, weak links in the body, weak system in the body. We all have our inborn weak link in our body. Somebody's lungs, for example, are vulnerable. There is a history of lung diseases in the family of different kind. Somebody is born into the family where digestive system problems are the foreground, or heart problems, or circulation problems, kidney problems, liver problems. We all have, when we are born already, some weak links. And those need to be recognized, respected, understood limitation of, and we need to ensure that we provide this particular system with absolutely optimal conditions, and at the same time being aware that this is our weak link, so it has to be supported on a regular basis. In all times, there was such a diagnosis as a lymphatic diathesis. In terms of traditional Chinese medicine, we talk about weak inborn qi, when the child is born already with compromised qi. So compromised energy does not let immune system function to its full capacity because obviously qi is needed everywhere. Our qi or energy is needed to manage stress, to manage everyday functioning of the body, including digestion, including function of the central nervous system, breathing, elimination, detoxification, many different things. And immune system is just part of it. So the portion of our qi, if this is already weak from birth, which is dedicated to immune system in particular, is going to be less, obviously, in comparison with somebody who is born with a very strong qi. So we need to understand our limitation, and we need to absolutely support those weak links, including general weak qi, to the best of our ability, skills, and knowledge. So the first level was general background. Second level, this is a stress management. So it's not level of stress which we have in our life, but management of stress. Why? Because stress is not something that happens to us. Stress is how we react to what happens to us. What kind of abilities and what kind of general inbuilt response, automatic response, default response to stress we have as a body, as a being, as a human being. Stress management is a big topic, and in Colourpuncture we have a huge amount of treatments which are directed specifically for stress management, for ensuring optimal functioning of endocrine system, hormonal system, and how in general make sure that our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system working correctly, they work in balance, they work like an orchestra. So endocrine system should work as fine-tuned, high-class orchestra. Third level is actually our lymphatic system and immune system. And depending on what kind of medical system, traditional medicine or complementary medicine, natural medicine, alternative medicine, you ask, there are different views on it. So, for example, if you're talking about traditional Chinese medicine, there is a concept of invasion by external pathogens. So when we're talking about colds and flus, there is a concept that there are some external pathogens that enter the body through particular pathways. So for example, this will be face in case of colds. And then we can expel the pathogens using particular points. So our first strategy when there is acute illness in TCM would be to expel pathogens. Our second strategy would be all the time support immune system, support lymphatic system, support generally metal element, because in case of colds and flus, we're talking about respiratory system, and respiratory system relates to lungs, obviously, and lungs, large intestine system, and meridians, and metal element of traditional Chinese medicine. In different systems of natural medicine, the big attention is paid to what is called ground regulation or soil of the body, how healthy our body environment is, how conducive it is to proper function of our immune system, lymphatic system, hosting the qi in the body, and how effective, consequently, our system will be in fighting off pathogens, internal or external. Here we're focusing more on external pathogens. Next level is limbic system. And this may come as a surprise if you're not familiar with the concept of lymphatic system being a psychological buffer. And this is a concept we really pay attention to in Colourpuncture. Our lymphatic system tends to hold bodily toxins, metabolic toxins, physiological toxins, psychological toxins, emotional toxins. This is more sophisticated and advanced level of treatments of cold and flus and inflammatory conditions. But this is very, very important. So, for example, if there is a simple deficiency of metal element, lung, large intestine system weakness, say, from birth, there is a tendency in the family, you're one of this family, and you have this tendency, and this is something that accompanies you, and this is something you want to work on. If, for example, you use classical acupuncture point, translate it into Colourpuncture, acupressure, and your condition improves, meaning that you have longer remissions. When colds or flu does come, it comes in a less magnitude of symptoms. You feel generally not as bad, and it happens not as often. So this is how you can judge the progress. If you're getting better with just simple application of spectral lights on Colourpuncture points, acupuncture points, reflexology zones, then it means that generally this is just a weak link in the body. And all you need to do, you need to support it on a regular basis, more on it later. If, however, you do all that and you do have an improvement, but you don't have an improvement which you feel you may have, then the next step will be attention to our limbic system. Why? Limbic system is a system which keeps our memories, which analyzes our life experience, which forms some total of our perception of how life is. This is important, because if our perception is that life is a constant stress, and we tend to be on the receiving side of very difficult events, or we don't have enough power, internal or external, this is going to affect our qi. This is going to affect our ability to fight off illnesses, because our energy will be much tied up in this. So limbic system treatments, which will ensure that our life experience, our perception of our life experience is as balanced as possible. And there are certain points and treatments and therapies to support limbic system. And the last level, but not the least, conflict resolution. If we tend to suppress our emotions, if we tend to hold a lot in ourselves, inside, without sharing it with other people, or without even sharing it with ourselves, because not necessarily you need to share your problems and pains and concerns and doubts with other people. You can share it with yourself, you can share it with your journal, you can reflect on it, but you can give a full voice to your concerns, worries, your difficulties of processing life experience, your worries about the future, your daily anxiety. Another situation is when we have stressful life, or we have intense life, many events happening, and we don't have time to process them properly. We react, but we don't have time to choose our intentional response. We don't have time to understand, to digest what happens to us, to integrate it in the grand scheme of things, and how we see this particular event or this particular intense period of life within the broader scheme of our life and in this body. So conflicts accumulated, emotions suppressed for a long time, difficulties resolving the conflicts, finding the way to resolve even when conflicts are named, can lead to stress, can lead to overload, and it can tax our resources of qi. So our qi is not quite available. Then what can happen? Obviously, the body reacts. Any stress, any toxins, anything which is foreign to the body will try to expel. In Western medicine terms, your immune system capacity suffers when you're under stress for a long time. And then you have some kind of inflammatory conditions. So the highest possible level of approach, how we can treat inflammatory conditions, colds, flus, is to make sure that we do something along the line of conflict resolution. That does not mean that you need to go for sophisticated therapies of Colourpuncture, although this would be the best. Sometimes very simple points, very simple treatment sequences will tap into this principle. On my website, you can find several articles. I will link them below in the description, which you can read to get an idea of how you can approach in general and treat in practice your acupuncture points, your reflexology zones, so you can support your immune system. If I am to describe in a couple of words what is the best way to support immune system, I would say little and often. If you aim to give yourself elaborated treatment, chances are you will succeed for some time, but you will run out of steam very quickly. And especially if you start an acute period of illness, you're down with your flu or cold, chances are you're not going to have much energy to actually do something. But if you start with very simple points, and if you repeat them, in case of acute illness, you can repeat them every 4 hours. By the way, obviously, do take advice from your doctor. This is an alternative approach, rather complementary than alternative, because it is based on a sound system of acupuncture, which is in research. So this is complementary approach. If you do have serious illness concern, always start with your doctor. However, this is what you can do. On this website, there are several articles. As said, you can create yourself a very simple secret. You can read descriptions of what each individual point does in more detail, so you can understand better, and you can actually focus on the quality of this particular point. In case of chronic conditions, when, for example, there is nothing particular in the moment, but you know that this is your season of colds, this is something that you have often, this is something that you have tendency to, you can do the same sequence in red color, which will sometimes just support your metal elements, support your lymphatic system and immune system. Sometimes it will bring about healing through some sort of a reaction, which you can then manage. Again, I will put a link in the description how to manage reactions. But the point is, chronic processes made acute, and then acute process managed correctly can lead to healing. And I've seen it times and times again. This is really effective. So please give yourself the gift of self-care. Do some Colourpuncture. You can use acupressure. You can use acupressure with oil relax. You can support yourself. Any questions, please ask. In November each year, I'm giving free consultation Colourpuncture. Even if you are not Colourpuncture practitioner, you're just generally interested in Colourpuncture, what it is and what it can do for you and how can you start, you can connect for free consultation. If you are Colourpuncture practitioner, if you're Colourpuncture student, if you're using Colourpuncture already and you want to update your Colourpuncture routine, please also reach out. We can create a custom-made protocol based on your current needs for your particular situation right at the moment. Colourpuncture has been a great gift for me and my family, and I'm really happy to share what I know about Colourpuncture and how it can help.